Well, I'm going to take every precaution I can, and I
think
want
you've got to.
I want to talk to you, and I wish you'd put down your thoughts on that a little bit,
I will.
because you're more than the head of the Federal Bureau, as far as I'm concerned. You're my brother and personal friend, and you have been for 25, 30 years.
In 1994, over 30 years after Lyndon Johnson assumed the presidency, and over 20 years after his death, the United States government began releasing tapes of his presidential phone conversations. Among the first tapes released were those conversations he had just after the death of President John Kennedy. On April 15th of that year, Ted Koppel featured the tapes on his Nightline program. On it, he conducted a roundtable discussion with Johnson biographer Doris Kearns Goodwin and other presidential historians and journalists. One of the most interesting tapes they listened to was a 20-minute conversation Johnson had with FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover on November 29, 1963, 1 week after Johnson became president. On the recording, Johnson and Hoover discussed their thoughts on the formation of a group to investigate the assassination, a committee that almost certainly became the Warren Commission. Then they turned their attention to the facts of the assassination itself, with Hoover updating Johnson with the latest information known by the FBI. Those facts, after only 1 week of investigation, are very close to those we know about today, conspiracy theorists notwithstanding. They discuss Lee Harvey Oswald's activities the day of the assassination, including his capture in the theater. Hoover tells Johnson, "There is no question Oswald is the man, given the evidence we have." Johnson asks about any relationship between Oswald and Jack Ruby. Hoover says they have discovered none. He explains Ruby was what he calls a police character who was well known by the authorities and speculates that is how he got into the prisoner transfer area. Hoover confides, Dallas police didn't operate with the highest degree of efficiency. At the end of the conversation, Hoover recommends Johnson consider a bulletproof car. Johnson replies, "I want to take every precaution I can. You're more than the head of the Federal Bureau as far as I'm concerned. You're my brother and personal friend, and you have been for 25 to 30 years." Upon hearing that last sentence, Koppel asked the panel, what did President Johnson mean when he told Hoover, "You're my brother"? Not a single panelist had any idea what Johnson was talking about. But we know, don't we? Lyndon B. Johnson is not always included in lists of presidents who were Freemasons. However, he was in fact initiated and entered apprentice on October 30th, 1937, in Johnson City Lodge number 561 at Johnson City, Texas. He never went beyond the first degree. J. Edgar Hoover, on the other hand, was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason, a York Rite Mason, a member of Federal Lodge number 1, Washington, D.C., and a charter member of Justice Lodge number 46 in Maryland. Lyndon B. Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover were, in fact, Masonic brothers, and President Johnson acknowledged it in that historic conversation. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.